Hello and welcome to another special edition of Two Mr. P's in a Podcast with me, Mr. P.
And the other Mr. P.
And we are back for one of our Chinwag episodes, and we are delighted to welcome none other than the doctor, presenter and author of the No Worries Guide for Boys, How to Grow Up and Feel Amazing, Dr. Ranj Singh. How are we doing, Dr. Ranj?
I'm okay, thanks. Much like everybody else, just kind of plodding on, taking each day as it comes. Just I'm so lucky I don't have to homeschool anyone. I just about look after myself. So I take my hat off to all the parents and carers out there that are doing about 50,000 jobs at the same time. I think you're incredible.
Oh no, it's been a challenge. We're recording this during the half-term break, and I think this half-term break is the one that every parent and every teacher sort of needed. Because we always start off by asking how's sort of lockdown been, especially this third lockdown. How's it been treating you?
I much like I think a lot of people, I went through different phases with the different lockdowns. The first one I kind of found quite therapeutic because it made me stop and do things that I've been putting off for ages, like finish off projects, finish off a book, clearing out cupboards and stuff like that. So all this stuff that I'd piled up. So that was really good. And it kind of made me a bit more mindful. So I quite liked that. And plus it was great weather, remember? We had really lovely weather at that time. The second one, we all just knuckled down in October, November time. We just thought, right, we've got to do this to get through to hopefully to have a Christmas. And then we all know what happened after that. This third one has been tough for everyone. The fact that it's cold, so we're a lot more cooped up inside. It's mentally, this one's been a really difficult one, I think, for a lot of people. And that's why I think we just need to be a little bit more understanding and kind to each other in this one, because everyone is going through a lot of stress right now. Yeah,
it is. It's stressful for everyone, isn't it? We've all got our sort of struggles. So, congratulations on the new book. It was released yesterday. We've both had a little look through it.
Wave it around as much as possible.
I said I'm going to get a copy for my boys. I've got 9-year-old triplets. I've got 2 identical boys.
Wow.
I've done quite well. I think that's the record of how quickly we've done one of these interviews where I've mentioned it.
Honestly, it's if we're playing a drinking game, that'd be the first thing. If Lee mentions that he's got triplets.
So hang on, you've got a set of twins and a non-twin. As in a non-identical twin.
Yeah.
That's quite quirky.
Yeah. It's great. The wonder. I mean, the homeschooling's been very stressful. I keep saying I keep making up the fact I've got Zoom calls when I haven't. I just come to this room just for a bit of a break.
Break.
Yeah.
Just need a break. Daddy's got a meeting, a really long meeting with a glass of wine. Yeah, I know.
They are a miracle, though, aren't they? The kids, and they do say that great things come from small packages. So well done, Lee.
Oh, I had to get a dig in
sure
somewhere.
Wonderful. You had to.
Yeah, but no, I think for my boys, so they're 9, turning 10 this year. I think the book is perfect for that sort of age range. I think Adam's, you want to get a copy for you, so you can learn a few things, Adam.
This is the thing. I mean, this is why, and a massive congratulations from me also. This kind of book, back when I was a youngster, would have saved me a lot of embarrassment along the way, a lot of awkward conversations, a lot of dodgy, stuff that parents, I'm not going to go into too much. No one needs to know this sort of stuff. But I do want to say, it is such a pleasure having you on. I've got a close friend who's on maternity leave, and I told her that we were interviewing you. And she said, oh my God, I've watched him all the time on This Morning. It's been the highlight of my maternity leave. Wow. I said, well, it's spending time with your precious new baby, but I'm sure Ranj will take
it. I mean, thank you.
Yeah. What do you say
to
that?
Help.
So for anyone listening, do you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
So it's called How to Grow Up and Feel Amazing, the No Worries Guide for Boys. And it is essentially a modern and up-to-date growing up guide for boys and young men. So it's aimed roughly at the ages of 10 to 14, but obviously you'll have younger children that will benefit from that and older ones. So I say anywhere between 8 to 16, to be honest. And it tries to be as inclusive as possible. So it doesn't just talk about boys, it talks about what girls go through as well to some extent, because it's important for boys to know that. And it's for anybody that identifies as a boy as well. They might find it useful, or for their parents and carers, or for their siblings and friends who just want to learn a bit more about the challenges physically, mentally, societally that boys are going through right now. And I literally poured everything into it. Everything I learned when I was growing up, everything I've learned from being a professional that looks after young people as well. I've tried to put as much into it as possible to try and help out as many people as possible. And I'm hoping that young boys will pick it up and see a part of themselves in it, or it will answer some of those questions. And even you mentioned that it might help Adam there. Some parents and carers have read it and said that, because obviously usually what happens is they screen the book before they give it to their little ones. They've said, I learned stuff. I didn't even know that. And I'm a 40-year-old man. So it's useful for everyone, even the big kids in your lives.
Like my brother there, And I mean, it's certainly comprehensive. It sort of covers everything. What was the sort of inspiration behind writing this book for boys? Was it a case of, I wish I had this book when I was younger, or was it the sort of issues that we're facing in today's world? Because, you know, I remember when the kids were born, I was very much on this gender stereotyping around my daughter, and my daughter's, you know, she plays sport, she does everything the boys do. But then I can't remember his name. I sat through a conference a while ago, and it was a guy talking about the way we stereotype boys as well, saying things like, you know, the worst phrase you can say to a young boy is "man up," and I've been very mindful of that. So what was the sort of inspiration behind? Was it a mix of both, or?
Yeah, it was to some extent. It's funny you mentioned that phrase, "man up." I use "woman up" because I think women are the stronger sex. Let's be honest.
I completely agree.
We could not do what they do, and honestly, we would fall apart if we had to do what girls and women had to do. But no, I totally get your point. So it was a bit of both of that. So when you look at what's out there in terms of growing up guides right now, there is a lot for girls, quite rightly, because I think growing up in this world as a girl, as somebody who identifies as female, whatever you want to say, it's really tough. And quite rightly, there's a lot of support. When you look at what's out there for boys, it's not quite so much. And what was out there was, relatively speaking, out of date. So there was the need for it. There's been a special need for it, given what's happened over the last year. I think, coincidentally, I started writing this before the pandemic struck. And then I think it's become even more relevant since everything that's happened. And also, you're right, I wanted it to be the book that I needed when I was growing up. I had to learn a lot of these lessons the hard way. I didn't have somebody telling me, giving me necessarily the advice I've put into here. And I think I could really have done with it. And it would have really made things a bit more comfortable for me, and a bit maybe less of a roller coaster through life. And I don't want any young person, any young boy, to go through what I had to go through to learn those lessons. And I'm hoping that they will find this helpful and not have to do that.
And it's just sort of hopefully opening those conversations, because I think one thing that a lot of boys do struggle with is opening up and talking about their feelings and emotions. And you know, you cover pretty much everything in the book, that, you know, diet, personal hygiene, body image, but there is a big focus on sort of mental health side of things, which I think for a lot of teachers is very obvious anyway. But why for you was it so important to have that sort of focus on the mental health side of things?
Mental health is such a huge topic right now, and it's a big topic for younger people, especially during the pandemic, when we've seen the impact that this pandemic has had on people's well-being, physically and mentally, especially that of children and young people. So I think you couldn't write a book about growing up without talking about mental health. And we have a whole chapter in this book about mental health, as well as dotted about in the other chapters. Obviously, I go back to it quite a lot. 50% of mental health problems manifest by the age of 14. If we're not talking to kids and young people before that, we are doing them a disservice. We need to be talking to them about it. And also, it's not just necessarily having all the answers, I think, because the book doesn't give you the answers. What it does do, though, is it normalizes some things. It normalizes feelings, and it makes, hopefully, boys feel a bit more reassured that they're not the only people going through it, that every day isn't fantastic. You have not so fantastic days and down days as well. And here's some ways to cope and manage with some of those feelings. And if you're really struggling, if things are overwhelming and it's affecting your day-to-day life and you being happy, then I hope that it gives them the confidence to ask for help. And that's a big message in this book is, if you're really struggling, speak to somebody.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And I also, for speaking from someone who advocates the positive use of technology, it was great to see there was a big chunk in there about internet safety and cyber safety. So again, why would you say that? I mean, I could probably answer that for you, but just for anyone sort of listening, because I talk about it all the time, and it sort of links into what you were saying there about the mental health side of things, isn't it? When you know, you were saying about people do have down days, but you don't tend to see that on social media when you're following a lot of other people. So what I feel is great about it is it does feel so much more relevant than a lot of the other guides that are out there, because it's including so many more, you know, up-to-date themes, I suppose.
Yeah, we have a whole chapter on social media, and that is all centered around the fact that the internet and social media is an increasingly bigger part of our lives generally, and increasingly a bigger part of young people's lives. But despite all of the amazing things that the internet and social media do, and I'm a massive advocate for it because I think it's a huge force for good and sharing and connection, and we talk about all of that stuff, we have to know how to use it responsibly. So, you know, just as wonderful as social media is, it can also be very risky, and you have to know how to use it responsibly and safely, especially as a young person. So we talk about recognizing things like fake news, talking about things like filters, and the fact that what you see online may not be what is actually exists in real life, and the impact that can have on the way you think about yourself and comparing yourself to it. We talk about communication and being kind online. We talk about cyberbullying and trolling, and being on the lookout for that and identifying it, and not doing it yourself inadvertently as well. So these topics are huge, and I think that same with mental health. You know, you can't have a grown-up guide without talking about it, and I'm glad we've got a chapter in there that was reviewed by a young person, actually, because I wanted to make sure it was hitting the right tone for them, because I think writing about it as a 41-year-old man who didn't grow up with the internet, kind of.
No way. I'll tell you what, you're looking belting for 41, my friend.
Tell me your skincare regime, please.
I'm just going to blame my genetics. Yeah, I was very conscious that actually when I grew up, I didn't have the internet, and I was kind of eased into it as it developed as I was a teenager. So I kind of learned to grow with the internet. Whereas now I think young people are just born straight into it, and you have to deal with it straight away. And they don't have the benefit that we have of gradually getting to learn it and getting to grips with it and recognizing when it is and isn't good.
Yeah, absolutely.
There'll be parents and teachers listening to this just getting on and getting that book ordered, because this is literally, it honestly ticks. I'm not just saying it because you're on, but it ticks every single box. And Lee, you know, Lee does talk a lot about this stuff like the technology side, the mental health side. It's just so crucial, because yourself being so popular and things, you know, people will be more likely to listen. And even having a flick through myself, yes, I did learn a lot, but I don't want to go into what I learned. Just the kind of language you used and the way you were kind of, you know, if you were talking about something like an erection and you were using the kind of slang uses of it, you know, boys are kind of a bit like, oh, but then when I was reading that, there was kind of a little bit of a smile, but then it was kind of like, oh, you know, I want to read on. And that's a 32-year-old. So, you know, I know that there'll be parents and teachers. So yeah, just well done again. It's like you said, such an important time for something like this to come out. So yeah, top draw.
Yeah, well, you're right. I think language was so important and tone was so important, particularly when you're talking about subjects that might be quite embarrassing and, you know, a little bit giggly and a bit funny. And I, you know, I do acknowledge that some of these things are funny and they're quite funny to read. And you know, they can be a little bit intimate. But the thing is, it's very important to be honest about it and say it as it is and be open and just, there is, when we talk about, there's a chapter talking about sex and intimate relationships and safety and consent and all the important stuff that goes with that. And it focuses predominantly on relationships and having solid, good relationships rather than just talking about sex.
Yeah.
But, one thing I really wanted to make sure is that we were doing it as openly and as honestly as we could be to try and predominantly to keep young people safe and to keep them happy. That's what the gist of it is. That's what the aim of it is. And I hope that parents and carers will feel confident in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to that point you were making about obviously children being born into this world where they've never known, a time before technology. I often think how lucky, because I think I got my first Facebook account and I must have been like 21, 22. And I know Adam went through a stage of using MSN Messenger and had some rather dodgy statuses using all sorts of song lyrics. So again, I can only imagine where he would have ended up with these sort of tools, given his easy approach to life.
Remember MySpace? People don't remember. Young people don't know what MySpace was.
No,
I mean, exactly. MySpace was where it all started. Come on,
yeah.
Before Facebook, we had MySpace, young'uns.
I don't know. I work at a school now, trying to inspire the next generation. And I don't know whether I would have had that impact if my kind of bosses, higher levels, would have seen my kind of capital, small case, capital, small case name with lyrics followed. Ice is cool, but I'm looking for more. It's your heart it's your love that my heart beats for. And I was about 14. I'd never even spoken to a girl before. Yeah, I thought I was kind of, rapping these tunes. And oh my God. I needed seriously telling at that time.
So embarrassing now, isn't it? Looking back on it. But we grow and we learn.
We do.
We grow and we learn.
I often say, I feel lucky that I grew up in the time that I did, because I think there's so much pressure on these young children with all that technology. Like you say, the filters, the comparing to what they see online, and this sort of pressure of feeling that you've got to look perfect 24/7. Whereas we've talked about on the podcast some of the rather dodgy fashion choices that we made back in the day. But luckily, they're hidden away. My mum's lot.
Let's not bring that up. Let's not bring that up. Then we're getting to hairstyles and all sorts.
Yeah. We've got a questionable back catalogue, let me tell you that much. So yeah, the chapter that you talk about, sort of sex and relationships education, again, done really, really well. Both myself and Adam have had to teach sort of the SRE curriculum, which can be challenging at the best of times. Was there anything or what sort of informed your approach to this part of it? Did you have to speak to young people? Was there anything that you actually found out from them that you didn't know before, or anything like that?
So I've learned from young people my entire life because I work with them, so I'm constantly learning. So very much of this book was informed by school curriculums. So topics that are certainly being taught and talked about were kind of like my frameworks. I was like, right, we've got to do that. We've got to put that in. We've got to put that in. But at the same time, I also wanted to try and be as inclusive as possible. So we talk about all kinds of relationships, not just heterosexual ones. We talk about gender identity and things like that. We talk about sexuality. We touch on all these topics because boys will be thinking about that stuff. And if nobody's talking to them, then they're kind of left out of the discussion. And I think it's really important to highlight that. Of course, we talk about sex. Of course, we talk about pregnancy. And of course, we touch on sexually transmitted infections. We touch on protection. But we also touch on consent and the importance of that. And we talk about love and relationships coming before sex. And, certainly I make a point in this book is that, I'm very mindful of the fact that I'm talking to boys and young men who may not be ready to have these sorts of conversations or think about that sort of thing. But the point is I'm saying to them, this is to prepare you for when you are. This is not saying that you have to. This is not saying that you should be. This is to say, actually, when you feel ready and when it's right, this is how to prepare yourself. This is how to be safe. And this is when to recognize that there's a problem. Yeah. Because that's one thing I think we've not been very good at is teaching all young people, actually, this is how to recognize a problem in a relationship that you might, that it actually might be bad for you. So yeah, I wanted to try and be as inclusive and as understanding and as open as possible, but using that school curriculum as my sort of structure.
Yeah, and it's great because hopefully, you know, children will get that understanding of how people can be different, and you know, learn that sort of acceptance of how people, you know, have different, you know, approaches to things. But it was funny because
and I think we need to remember.
Yeah,
sorry,
go on. Sorry,
well,
no, go
one
on.
thing we need to remember, and I didn't want to just jump with you there, but one thing I think all parents and carers need to remember is that young people are so much more accepting and understanding of diversity and difference right now. That, you know, they are so open to ideas. They're open to this fantastic world around them. Let's not limit them. Not limit them. Let's actually take that and let's develop it and let's celebrate it and let's, you know, let's champion their openness, their understanding and their tolerance and their willingness to learn about diversity, because I think that's only a good thing. And especially when it comes to things like relationships, I think that's hugely important.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you're right. It's no one size fits all for everybody.
Yeah. When we were sort of, go on, Adam.
I was just going to say, it's so true about what you were saying about children there. I mean, you know, working in schools for the last, it's coming up to 10 years for myself, and you know, the children that are different, who met, you know, who like different things, different fashion choices, whatever it may be, the kind of what I've seen in the last 10 years, because obviously I went to school, then had a dodgy 10 years of jobs here, there and everywhere, which I won't bore you with, and then obviously back into school, and the kind of acceptance, the love and the protection is what really surprises me, is that if anyone, I always remember one of my first weeks in my old school, and there was a girl there who had Down syndrome, and she came in, and one of the boys, you know, they were so protective over her, and one of the boys like laughed, and the class just like jumped on this boy, kind of like, what do you think you're doing? It, you know, kind of standing up for her. I mean, obviously in the right way, you know, we teach them in the right way, but it's so true. No matter what kind of beliefs or you know, sexual orientation, whatever it may be that children have, it's like
doesn't matter. They're wonderful
kind of
people.
Protection and the love is absolutely amazing.
Children are better humans than grown-ups are.
Oh, absolutely.
They show more humanity than all of us, and we always act like we teach children. We've got so much to learn from them that we forgot when we were growing up, and this was, you know, growing up into this world and taking responsibility and all the other stuff that comes. There is so much purity and acceptance and love and all the basics that are there that I think we need to nurture. And that's what I think teachers do really, really well. They really know, they pick up on that stuff and they know what to do. And I think, you know, that's why we should cherish and respect and celebrate our teachers, because they know how to do that. Let's learn from them.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason why so many teachers choose that profession, because every single day you're being surrounded by young people who remind you of, you know, everything you've just said there, and it is special. It is.
Well, it was a better time.
Yeah,
when the world was a better place.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that leads us nicely onto the next question, because obviously our podcast does focus a lot about life in the classroom. So what were you like at school? What sort of student were you like when you were at school?
Oh gosh, do you know what? I went through a phase of, in my early sort of school years, not really feeling like it was for me. I wasn't academic, didn't really have a focus, didn't really have a goal, wasn't very good at school, to be honest. Wasn't really, I don't know, it just didn't stick with me. And then went into a phase where I started to focus, and then all of a sudden it all started to drop into place. And all I needed was a goal. All I needed was a dream. And my dream at that point became, oh, actually, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. So then, therefore, I know what I need to do now. And I obviously had wonderful people championing me and supporting me and helping me and giving me great advice, but I needed that focus, because before that it was just all over the place. So then I was kind of very much, you know, a good student at that point. Before that, I was probably a bit of a nightmare, I think. But as soon as I got that goal, as soon as I got that dream, and I thought, right, this is what I've got to do to get there. That was it. I was after that, I was the well, that wasn't the model people, but I tried to be. Definitely tried to be. And definitely it paid off. It paid off. I got into medical school and I never thought that was going to happen.
No. And what was it that inspired that goal of wanting to be a doctor? What was it that made, created that goal for you?
I think I needed somebody to tell me that I could do it.
Right.
Weirdly, because before that, I grew up. I'm not from a very well-off background, and I didn't have anybody in my family that had gone to university or done anything like that. My parents were first-generation immigrants. They worked in manual professions, and they worked really, really hard. And they kept saying to me and my brothers, "Come on, you don't need to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
Do well try hard at school, and you won't have to, and hopefully you'll have a better life." And the thing is that didn't work for me because I was like, well, I don't really know what I want to do. I can't do any of this. I'm not very good at school. I don't really know how. Nobody's telling me how to do this. And I think it took people to say, look, just try, just aim, just focus, give it a go, find the things you're good at and run with those. And I found that, I was really, really creative at school at one point, but then I thought, actually, I'm not really finding a focus there. I love it. I love art. I love music. I love all of that kind of stuff, but I don't feel like I'm focusing on it. And then as soon as somebody said, well, why don't you want to be a doctor? Why don't you actually try? Why don't you actually have a go? And I just knuckled down. I thought, right, I know what I've got to do now. And that's what I did.
Real.
That's an amazing, for anyone listening, that kind of goal setting. I was wondering whether you might have seen an episode of Casualty, and you thought to yourself, you know what, I fancy doing this. Them kids playing with fireworks at the start. I need to help them.
I think I've always been interested in science and the way things ticked.
Yeah.
And I've always had this sort of, I suppose, want to help people. So it kind of felt like a logical choice. I needed someone to, I think, cheerlead me. That's what I needed. Was that a particular teacher who did that for you, or? I had some wonderful teachers actually that could do that. I remember in primary school, I had a teacher called Mrs. Page who championed my creativity. She was the reason that I loved art and music.
Yeah.
Then I had Mr. Farley in junior school, who championed my technical and scientific side, and thought, hang on, you're good at this. You can do this.
Yeah.
And then just going through school, more and more people. Mr. Wolf, my biology teacher, who wanted to do medicine but didn't, and then went into teaching instead. And I remember him saying, "Yes, you can do this. Come on, we've got this." And it just needed teachers along the way to say to me. It was actually a family friend who was a pharmacist that said to me, "Why don't you just aim as high as you can get and see where you end up? Because you're only going to end up in a better position."
Yeah.
Reach for the stars, and if it fails, the worst that can happen, you land on the moon, or whatever the saying is. I can't remember. But I've stuck with that. Every opportunity I've got, I've just been like, right, I'm going to run with this and see where I end up. And worst comes to worst, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if it does, wonderful.
Yeah. Taking risks.
That's what I've kind of done.
Absolutely. It's the way to do it.
Push yourself.
Yeah. So was science your favorite subject at school? Would you say, was that the one you liked the most, or?
Oh, it used to be art. Used to be art.
Right.
And I also, art was probably my most favorite in primary school. That was the thing that I really loved. And music. Music was actually weirdly the first thing I was ever told I was good at.
Right.
And I remember that feeling. I remember my teacher telling me that. It was completely out of the blue. She forced me to try out for the school choir. She forced me to sing, and then was like, where did that come from? And that was the first time I had a feeling that I was good at something.
Right.
And I remember that was my favorite thing then. And then going into secondary school, I think it was probably, I still loved art, still loved music.
Yeah.
Music maybe not so much at that time, but it's probably science. Science was the thing that I thought, I can do this.
Yeah.
It made sense. Do you know when something feels logical and you think, yeah, that makes sense. That kind of, I get it. I get how that works. Okay, got this. I got this one. But yeah, so there's been a weird, like, artistic side to me and then a scientific side to me that are in constant battle with each other as to who's going to do what.
Yeah.
I had the same success at primary school. One of my own, I mean, you know, we always talk on the podcast that Lee was quite, you know, he was a teacher's pet. He was a good student. I, on the other hand, made some questionable choices. Nothing too bad, but I was kind of, you know, a bit of a renegade. And in one of my school reports that we found at my mum's, just because going back on what you were saying about your music and getting told that you're good at something, in my school report, every single lesson, it was like maths, he doesn't concentrate. English, he messes around. Then it up came music, and it said Adam can clap his own name, and that was it. And I was thinking, boom, saying to my mum and dad, you got to get me that football now. You got to get me that Power Rangers football. I smash music. Adam Parkinson, see that?
He can clap his name.
Yeah,
that's all I needed.
And that was secondary school as well. That was secondary school as well. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite an achievement. That is.
Yeah. But you get a sense of your love for music because every chapter starts with a reference to a song, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So music for me is like weaved into the fabric of life. Like everything has a song, and I listen to music every day, and it's the way I kind of relax. And I thought, do you know what? Music is about life. Songs are about life. So why don't I take songs that have real meanings to me and put them into this book? And hopefully, you know, someone might go away and start listening to them. Like we've got everything from Greatest Showman to Lizzo to, you know, Salt and Pepper, which is my era.
You got Lion King in there, haven't you?
Lion King's in there. You know, got Ed Sheeran, obviously. Can't get away from Ed Sheeran. Got to have him in there. So I wanted every chapter to have a musical meaning as well. And I hope that young people might discover something new through that. But they're all positive, empowering songs.
Yeah, because I think that's the moment where you realize you are getting old, when your children are listening to music and you make the same comment your dad did, which was, this isn't real music. Because I can't do it. I have to listen to like History on the radio.
Yeah.
And my kids are like, what's this music? This is music, kids. This is what it's about. Is there any particular is there any particular song that sort of defines your time at school, that as soon as you hear it, it just takes you back? Because that's the power of music, doesn't it? It has that ability to just sort of, I know you sort of mentioned songs there, but is there one definitive song that is like your era at school, your time at school?
What got you up at the school disco? What made you?
I never went to the school disco. I remember listening to a lot of Madonna, George Michael, because that was Michael Jackson was big at that time. I remember all of that stuff. But I don't know if there was one song. My friends were all kind of getting into grunge and sort of Nirvana and Metallica and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of like, it's all right. It's not really my thing, but it's pretty cool. 9 Inch Nails, a little bit out there. But I was kind of like, and then I started to get into sort of R&B music at that point. And then I went into university and then, obviously became a grown-up at that point. But I don't think there's one particular song. I'd have to have a think about that, actually. That's a really good point.
Yeah. What about you, Adam? Have you got the one song? I think it's Mysterious Girl. It's got to be by Peter Andre for Adam. That's
no.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't want to embarrass myself in front of Dr. Ranj, but I do have a bit of a party piece where I kind of strip to Mysterious Girl. Don't worry, I've not got the tune lined up for you now. Shame. But I'm not sure, that face is quite insulting.
Okay.
But no, it's a bit of a party piece. But back in the day, do you know what song comes to mind, which I absolutely loved, was Living La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin. I used to buzz off that tune, and I have this thing with songs. It's like certain bits of songs I love.
Yeah.
Like just, certain bits of the chorus or certain bits of the verse. And the one where he goes like, woke up in New York City. That bit. Yeah.
She took my heart and she took my money.
Yeah,
that girl's gonna make me off.
Yeah. Maybe take you dancing. We could do it. That's a charity single right there.
It's such a good tune. Come on, it is.
Great tune.
It is, yeah. But, yeah, I think that example of what happens if Adam ends up doing a dance to Mysterious Girl should have gone in the book of what happens if you go over the limit of alcohol. That tends to be, as a bad. This is what could happen. Yeah, this is what.
Yeah. Be careful, kids. This is where you may end up.
You don't want to end up like this guy.
So going back to your school days, was there any particular subject that you just did not like? Just sort of hated with a passion?
Oh, was there? I wasn't very sporty. And I actually am really sad about that, because the reason I wasn't sporty, not because I didn't want to do it, I think it was the way it was taught in those days. And I think I'm glad that the teaching has come on. I think sport. I remember being in sports lessons where kids were ridiculed for not being good by teachers at the time, and this was a long time ago. People being sort of slightly made fun of. And at the time, people thought it was funny, and I didn't think it was funny, and it made me uncomfortable, and also being made to do sport. So in my secondary school, we were made to do rugby, made to do hockey, made to play cricket, and when you enforce it on someone rather than saying, "Well, what are you good at?" Because I wanted to play badminton, I was good at that. I wanted to do cross country running, I liked that. I wanted to play table tennis. Those I didn't really get a chance to exercise quite so much. And I think, and things like I discovered later in life that I love dancing. And I wish I'd had the opportunity to be sporty through those rather than this regimented view that you can only play certain things. Our school didn't play football in secondary school. We used to play at lunchtime, and I used to love that. And I think that because it wasn't kind of allowed, as it were, it kind of fell off my radar, which I think is a bit of a shame. But yeah, sports probably, PE.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I think those bad experiences can stick with people for a very long time. And when you talk in the book about the importance of health and sort of exercise, if you don't have those opportunities, it can then lead on to, it can be quite challenging to then find your groove when you get a little bit older and what sort of sport exercises.
Definitely. And I think those school experiences can make or break you for life, especially when it comes to things like physical activity. If your experience around that is positive growing up, then you're more likely to do it as an adult. I think that's hugely important, as important as all the other stuff we teach kids. But I talk about in the book about finding the thing that you love and using that as your exercise. So I use dance as my exercise because I love it. I'm not a massive fan of going to the gym, but because I'm of a certain age, I have to be healthy. I try to make myself go, but I love the dancing. That's the thing that keeps me going. So Adam, maybe I'll get some tips from you.
Well,
to be honest, got a few moves.
myself, my wife and my wife's nan were, I bet you don't know where this story is going, but it's actually nothing to do with
this is going into dodgy territory, isn't it?
Nan, we're massive fans of you on Strictly, so it's nice to know that you kind of still loving the dance. My wife used to dance, so she's we actually on Valentine's Day, I've not even told Lee this, we did kind of a beginner's salsa on YouTube. Wow. But I was in my flip flops and I nearly went arse over tit so many times.
It's not gonna work.
Exactly. So well done as well.
Salsa is the best dance. It's the best dance when you've had a few and you want to have a laugh. It's really hard. Like ballroom and Latin dancing, I take my hat off to people who do it because it looks easier than it is. So when you're actually learning to do it, it's really hard. Yeah. But salsa is the fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just not in flip-flops.
Was that love for dancing that you said you loved, that was that pre-Strictly or was that because of Strictly?
No. Well, I used to enjoy going out dancing with
Yeah,
mates, which is very different. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You will never see anyone twerking on Strictly.
That's what I was about to say. You don't see those sort of dances on Strictly, do you?
You don't see that sort of stuff. No. So I went into Strictly thinking, yeah, you know what? I got rhythm and stuff, and I got completely destroyed when I realized what it actually takes to dance.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was really hard work, physically and mentally, but I fell in love with it afterwards, and I've tried to keep it going.
Oh, amazing. So let's talk about, obviously you went to uni, you qualified as a doctor. How did the sort of transition to being on the telly and becoming sort of, you know, the UK's doctor on This Morning and the TV shows? How did that all come about?
Oh, gosh.
Was that
completely by accident?
Really?
Completely by accident. I did not leave university thinking I want to be on telly. No. I didn't have any dreams or aspirations of any kind like that. It just happened, by an opportunity came up. This is the thing I talk about. An opportunity came up and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give this a go and see what happens. If it works out, great. If it doesn't matter. It's a life learning experience. But if it works out, I'm going to run with it. And I ran with it. I took it and I thought I can bring my day job to this other platform, maybe, you know, give out some health information, help people out a little bit, all health promotion stuff. And I still do that. And it's just kind of grown and grown and grown. And it kind of stuck. And I kind of thought, okay, you know what, I can do this. And the role grew and I got to do some amazing things. I've got to go on Strictly and amazing shows like that. I've been very lucky, but it was very much push yourself out of your comfort zone, see what happens. Just see what happens. And I think that's kind of something that I keep trying to do all the time now, just thinking you never know where it's going to go. So give it a shot and see what happens.
Absolutely. And do you think everything you were saying there about your love for the arts from your primary school played a big role in you being able to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, I genuinely think that's my creative side that's been battling to get out since I was a kid, thinking, hey, you know, there's a little opportunity here that we can do something slightly out of the doctor box, because doctors get boxed up into a certain kind of person does a certain kind of thing, and you're not allowed to do anything else, or you're not going to be able to do anything else. And I think my creative side thought, right, this is my opportunity to do a little bit of what I enjoy. So now I do both jobs, and I've never been happier, because I think both sides of my personality get a good go at stuff now. Whereas before I was always probably constantly a little bit like, oh, do I really want to do this or do I really want to do that? So yes, I'm the happiest I've ever been, I think.
Oh, amazing. And it's just great because
probably as well.
I think for myself on a very smaller scale, because I work in my school part-time and then I usually travel to lots of different schools and I do training with teachers. And someone pointed out to me, made me realize a while back, you know, it's amazing because usually if you're in school full-time, you'd only be able to impact, say, 30 children, whereas being able to spread your ideas to so many schools, you have, and it must be similar for you. So, you know, if you were still full-time in a GP surgery, there'd only be so many people, but when you're able to spread, like you say, that awareness, you know, and there is still that sort of, it's not really stigma, but there's so many people who don't go to doctors when they should do and get things checked out. But if you're there on telly sort of pointing things out, you know, it must just be great to know that you're able to, you know, raise the profile of, you know, NHS doctors and the incredible job they're doing, but also educate and just sort of help so many people through what you're doing. It must be a great feeling.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. All of us medics, there's lots of us who do work in an on-screen role or in the media. We appreciate that it comes with lots of perks, and you know, there is a fun side to it. There is a really glitzy glam side to it. But we also recognize the reason we do it is health promotion. So my 7-minute item on This Morning, which doesn't cost the NHS a penny because I work part-time anyway. So, you know, I'm not at work on that day. So when I go in and do a 7-minute item and it saves or helps or goes out to millions of people, that is more powerful and more cost-effective than any intervention that I could have done at work. And that's the importance of it. As silly as these platforms may seem to some people, they are really powerful. Oh gosh, don't know who that is. But yeah, they're really, really important. And we get a lot of stick, I think, on social media sometimes, but people are always like, oh, he's obviously not at work today. His patients are waiting in their waiting room. And I was like, that actually really hurts, because I work evenings and weekends, and then during the week I do all of this stuff, and I don't take days off that often.
No.
But, you know, I recognize that this platform I've gotten really lucky, but it's really powerful and I want to make the best of it.
Yeah. And I saw the other day, your parents got vaccinated.
HIV test, didn't you?
Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you did a live HIV test, didn't you? On the back of the It's a Sin program. And
yes.
Something like that is, like you're saying, is so powerful. And even though you are working, you know, I agree. I'd love to tell them stupid people that say like, oh, the patient's waiting. You know, that what you did on this morning there, just like you said, a little short thing where you did the test showing kind of how easy, how quick could save so many people's like lives and stuff and families. And, you know, so yeah, don't listen to the fools.
Well, this is it. And I think if you stick yourself on a public platform, you're going to get a degree of stick. But that one item that we did on HIV testing and the importance of it resulted in just one organization reporting a 900% increase in the number of home tests ordered. And that's how powerful it is. And I think that's how important it is. And I don't think people necessarily realize that that's what we do sometimes.
Have you watched It's a Sin?
Yes, broke my heart.
It's
absolutely
amazing,
oh my gosh, it's incredible. And it's a lesson in history for some of us. Grew up in that time. I was born late 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I know the stigma that was around the time. Being a kid, I didn't appreciate how strong that stigma and damaging it was. And it's only now looking back on it and seeing things like It's a Sin and that I realized, you know, things were horrible. People were horrible to each other, and we need to learn lessons from that. And especially the fact that we're in a pandemic right now, we are seeing some of those behaviors replaying, particularly on social media. And I think that we have to remind ourselves that, hang on, we're better than that. We should have learned from this. Right now, we need each other. We shouldn't be against each other. We should be trying to help each other out. And HIV and AIDS has taught us a lot of things. We must not forget those lessons.
Yeah, I was really affected by it. We watched... we sort of binged 4 episodes in one sitting, and then I couldn't stop thinking about the program until we watched the next episode. The next day, it was really, really moving. One of the best things I've watched for a very long time. But yeah, no, what I was going to say there was I saw on your Instagram that your parents were vaccinated the other day.
Yes.
Is that we're buzzing with that?
Hugely emotional and moment of relief, I think, because my parents have worked so hard, and everyone wants the best for their parents and wants them to be safe and looked after. And I think that the relief of seeing them getting the vaccine, especially when coronavirus and COVID affect people from Black and Asian and minority ethnic communities more than everybody else, it was such a relief to see actually there's a bit of protection that they're getting. And working for the NHS myself and being a very strong vocal advocate of everyone keeping ourselves and each other safe, especially by getting the vaccine whenever you're due. It was really great to see them doing that. And it sent out a huge message, I think, to my community to say that, look, let's put our money where our mouth is. I put myself being vaccinated on social media, not because I wanted people to say, oh, that's amazing. I wanted to show people, if I'm willing to have it done and I want to put myself forward, then you should be too, because I'm playing my part. Let's all play our part. And if you can get it, please do so.
Yeah. So I've got 2 more questions before we do wrap it up, if that's okay. So for any parents listening to this who might be sort of a little bit worried about their child over this sort of lockdown, as far as sort of mental health wise, what would your tips be? What would you advise to any parent worried about the impact the lockdown has had on their child or children?
Yeah, I think a lot of parents will relate to what you've just said and be feeling like that, especially right now. I think the most powerful thing that a parent can do is remember that you're not the therapist. When your child is going through a mental health difficulty, you don't have to have all the answers. But what you can do as the parent is create an environment that is nurturing, loving, and safe, where a young person can feel like they can come to you and talk, and you will listen without judgment. And then together you can go away and find the answers. Or you can say, okay, right, let's explore some of this. Tell you what, let's go and look this up. Let's go and speak to someone together. then they feel safe. You just need to create that environment of safety and support. That's the biggest thing I think you can do as a parent. And just remember, there are loads of resources out there available, probably more now online and remote resources than there have ever been before.
Yeah.
And the NHS is always there. Healthcare professionals are always there to help you out. There are various charities, which we mention a lot of them in the book. At the end, there's loads of resources for parents, carers, and young people that are out there to support you when you're going through that struggle. But just remember that, remind your young person that you're there for them. You won't judge them. You'll listen, that they're not the only person that's going through it. Everyone has up days and down days. We can manage our feelings. Things can get better. And if you're really, really struggling, tell you what, let's go and find some help together.
Yeah, really, really good advice. Love it. And the last question, and we ask this all of our guests, if you could speak to your 10-year-old self, if you could go back in time and speak to your 10-year-old self, what would you, what advice would you give?
Gosh, that's a toughie. That's a toughie. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually. I think it's to say that basically it gets better.
Yeah,
it gets better no matter what you're going through right now. It's tough. It's really tough. You know, everybody has struggles. Everybody goes through hard times, and things right now will be feeling really, really difficult at times. But trust me, it gets better, and trust me, it gets so much better. And that you are more capable, you are more resilient, and you have more potential than you realize. And all you need to do is tap into that.
Yeah.
You can achieve anything if you put your mind to it. So tell you what, put your mind to it, be nice to other people, they'll be nice back. And yeah, go and grab your dreams, because that's what you deserve. And every young person deserves that.
And I think hopefully any young person listening to that will take that on board, because it is, it's great. And when you say there about the word resilience, and I think, again, when we were talking before about all the qualities children have that a lot of adults don't have, I think that's one of the, children are incredibly resilient. And speaking as a teacher, I know there's probably a lot of parents who are worried about, lockdown and the impact it'll have on education. But I don't worry that when we do get back to normal, children being incredibly resilient will get back to where they need to be. Teachers and school staff will continue to work the backsides off, because that's what they're amazing at. And it won't be long before we're back to where we need to be. So
there's more hope around the corner.
Absolutely, light at the end of the tunnel, isn't there? Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I found that really sort of inspiring, with all the sort of insights you've given. The things you've been saying there about taking risks, and I think it's such an important lesson in life to do that. It's brilliant. So yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Brilliant.
Really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thanks for everything you do as teachers. I think you're brilliant.
Oh, thank you very, very much. Cheers.
Thank you.